Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Heat Treat Radio. My name is Doug Glenn. I'm the publisher of Heat Treat Today, also the host here. I have the great honor of being the host on Heat Treat Radio. We've got three guests today from ALD, which I will introduce shortly. But I would like to just tell you what we're going to be talking about today, which I think is rather fascinating. It has to do with certification of multi-chamber or multi-module furnaces for Nadcap purposes. It's kind of an interesting conversation. These three have been through it. We're going to talk to them about it. So if you are currently running any type of multi-chamber furnace or modular systems, you might want to pay attention to today's episode. I'd also like to mention our sponsors for this episode of Heat Treat Radio today. There are actually two sponsors. The first one is ALD Vacuum Technologies and a sister company, ALD Thermal Treatment. And we'll get more about both of those companies later on in today's episode. So let me introduce the speakers to you first off. First speaker is Andrew Chan. Andrew is a sales and application engineer at ALD Vacuum Technologies North America in East Windsor, Connecticut. Andrew has a background in material sciences and engineering. And I found out earlier it's from Drexel, which was very nice. Great. Okay, and has been with ALD since 2020. Andrew supports ALD's vacuum heat treatment customers to specify new equipment builds and heat treat process troubleshooting. In addition, Andrew is responsible for EB, electron beam, and PVD, physical vapor deposition technologies, and assists with vacuum metallurgy portfolio there at ALD. Andrew, by the way, he's on the equipment side of the business. Our other two guests are really on the actual services, the heat treatment side of the business. And I'll start with Kelly Peters, Kelly is the VP of Operations at ALD Thermal Treatment in Port Huron, Michigan. She's been with ALD since 2007. Throughout her career, she's held different job responsibilities, primarily in R&D and quality. And I would just like to make a note that Kelly was one of our honorees for our 40 Under 40 in the year 2020. So very nice to have you on this episode. And then finally, we've got Dave Dill II, who Dave told me I could just call him Dave. He was a maintenance manager. I think Kelly and Dave worked together at ALD Thermal Treatment in Port Huron. Dave has been with ALD since 2006. Working on equipment installations and maintenance locally at Port Huron. Dave now not only manages local maintenance activities, but assists a parent company, their parent company, in equipment installations and services where needed. So that is our group. Welcome, everybody. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
in prep for this, we were talking about the situation that kind of sparked our desire to have this episode, and it had to do with perhaps a bit on your side, but also on the side of some of your customers. And I think, Andrew, let me focus this question at you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
About people not even knowing that they could Nadcap certify a multi-chamber modular type furnaces. Can you tell us about that and what the groundwork is here?
Yeah, so ALD participates in all the major heat treatment trade shows. And one of the things we noticed, including the last two furnaces in North America, was just like a lack of awareness that multi-cell heat treatment furnaces can be Nadcap certified. And so, we found through interactions with visitors at our booth or, conversations during the social hours, that people really had it engraved in their minds that only single chamber heat treatment equipment can be Nadcap certified. And this was true for a very long time. I think up until about 5 years ago, with the newest revision of AMS 2769D, I think it is. So yeah, the real impetus is just to bring some awareness to the industry that you're now able to certify and use multi-cell heat treatment equipment for aerospace applications. With that, you get high volume capacity, which historically it's been associated with the automotive industry, both the OEMs and their suppliers. But we can bring that benefit to the aerospace market and really kind of lower heat treatment costs for the aerospace industry.
Okay. So let's jump into two specifics here before we really start talking about the certification process, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. These are very basic questions, but we can't assume everybody knows the answer to them. So first off, you talk about multi-cell. I've said multi-chamber, which probably isn't as accurate. It's multi-cell applications. Can you tell us what is that? How do those things look? How do they work?
Yeah, sure. So a multi-cell furnace is something like our module therm or our synchrotherm furnace. And if I could share an image. Yeah, so what you can see here are multiple individual vacuum chambers, which we call a treatment cell. And you can line up to about 14 of these in a row.
Hmm.
And each one is basically dedicated to heat treating a single load. So the treatment cell has its own insulation, heating elements, process gas, and then all of these are serviced by a single transfer car that you can see down at the end of this rail here, this rail with the count track. And then
Hmm.
attached to that transfer car is our quenching cell. So we've got this
Okay.
movable transfer car that loads and unloads the parts, and then we can quench them immediately after pulling them out of each treatment cell. We can also do oil quenching, but the oil quench would just be a fixed tank. It wouldn't be on this movable transfer car.
That was going to be my question. That you're talking about those quenching. That quenching is a high pressure gas quench, I assume.
Yes, that's correct. I should have mentioned
Yep.
that. It's high
Yep.
pressure gas quench. So historically, it's been helium, but we can also do nitrogen, just because helium costs have started to
Yeah.
increase over the last couple
Yep.
decades.
And that transfer car is under vacuum
Yes.
or
So we
during the
put the load
transfer.
in. Everything is done under vacuum. We transfer between. You see these red doors here. These are let's say like isolation doors, essentially.
Yeah.
So yeah, everything's done under vacuum. And when we pull the load out to quench it, it's done very quickly. Also under vacuum, and then yeah, we just quench up to 20 bar.
Okay. And that's your module. That's your module therm.
Mhm.
Or yeah.
Yeah, this is our module therm. Let me see if I can find a picture of our synchrotherm. So the synchrotherm is like a mini module therm in a sense. Can you see my image?
Yes.
Yeah, so we kind of call this like a pizza oven essentially. So we've got multiple hot zones stacked on top of each other, and the footprint for the hot zone is like um, 500 by 600 millimeters. So it's a smaller
Okay.
footprint than the module therm, and everything's under the same vacuum environment. And then similarly, we have transfer telescopic loader that moves the loads between the hot zone and the quench, and then a single quenching chamber, which also functions as the inlet and outlet for the load.
Okay. 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 Very interesting. That's helpful. I think that gives people a good sense of what we're talking about so they can visualize it in their mind as we're going through. So that's the equipment. So the other thing I wanted to ask you about, and again, I'm guessing most everybody that's listening knows this, but let's just deal with it. Nadcap certification. What is it?
Well, Nadcap certification, it's a comprehensive approach to aerospace and specifications. It covers maintenance, pyrometry, heat treater training, your quality control, and even your contract review. It focuses more on the process, not so much the product. And it is audited by a third-party organization called PRI. And what they do is they review your processes, your supporting data, and your entire management system. I would say the accreditation process involves an internal audit with some corrective actions by the organization. And then you can go for your initial audit with PRI, but you have to make sure you have that internal audit done first. And once you go through the initial audit, we assigned a staff engineer, and this person is going to review all of the findings from that audit. And with your corrective action process and supporting data, if the staff engineer approves, you will move on to the next stage, which is actually going in front of an engineering team where they vote whether or not you'll be accredited. So you're hoping you certainly get to this point. When it comes to heat treatment specifically for Nadcap, though, it really covers all of your AMS specifications, your process relevant instrumentation, pyrometry, very large portion of it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. So the team of engineers you were talking about, those are not internal to you guys. That's that PRI, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So okay, so that and it's primarily an aerospace. In fact, is it exclusively aerospace, or is it primarily, or is it applied to other industries besides aerospace? You know.
Aerospace and defense primarily.
Okay. Okay. So how did you guys, once you understood that it was something that could be done, obviously, with
Mhm.
your equipment, with the equipment that Andrew and his team would build, what how did your NADCAP process go? How did you get started? How long did it take, etc.? And does it bring back any nightmares?
Nightmares a little bit, I would say. No, I would. It definitely was very intimidating, if you will.
Yeah.
But generally, I would say the industry, probably about 18 months until you could find yourself going through the actual PRI audit. In our particular case, it took us about a year. And we had a lot to do within that year. So we had 4 months that it was all initial procedure revision. So you're going through maintenance, production, quality control, and you want to make sure it meets all the NADCAP requirements. You have to go through commercial compliance. So you want to make sure that from the commercial side that there is an understanding during your contract review and all of these processes that you're meeting those specifications. But I would say the largest portion was collecting data and making organizational changes. That took us about 6 to 7 months to accomplish. Um, and the reason for this is that you have to gather all the data necessary and make those changes daily so that you're actually in compliance. So by the time you do your self audit, your internal audit, you're really zoning in to get ready for accreditation, and you do those corrective actions. And probably about 2 months later, we scheduled our actual PRI audit and had them on site.
Okay. So you mentioned organizational changes. The first thing I think about with that is, changing personnel, but were you meaning about, is that what we mean when we say organizational changes? Are you talking about internal process,
Operational,
operational changes?
operational organization. So the organization
Yeah.
when I speak about, I think of your management system as a whole.
Gotcha. I'd like to take a break right now. I just want to get a word in from our sponsor. So we'd like to thank ALD Technologies and also ALD Thermal Treatment for sponsoring today's episode. ALD is the world's leading manufacturer of vacuum furnace systems for thermal and thermochemical treatment and metallic materials. Their portfolio encompasses vacuum melting and casting, advanced coating systems for IGT and aviation turbines, atomizing systems for high-quality spherical powders, and vacuum heat treatment systems and services for hardening precision components. ALD's products are bespoke, meaning they are customized and tailored to your specific needs, as are their service capabilities. In the heat treatment world, ALD's multi-cell module therm and synchrotherm systems form the backbone of the world's high precision, low pressure carburizing production. Whether you choose to operate your own system or utilize one of ALD's heat treatment service centers, the company is proud of the numerous products being manufactured today that are touched by ALD's equipment or thermal processing service centers. And as we've been discussing in today's episode, adding NADCAP certification to their Port Huron site is just another example of how ALD innovates their services to the demands of a dynamic industry. Find out more about ALD vacuum technologies on the web at www.ald-vt, as in vacuum technologies, or you can email them at info@ald-vt.de. So the website ends with .com and the email ends with a .de. So Dave, maybe I'll ask you this next question. And that was that is, were there any pothole? I assume you were involved with this
Yes,
process
quite a
from the
bit,
beginning.
quite a bit.
All right. Any major potholes where they change a flat tire after you hit it or anything of that sort?
No, it was, I mean, the biggest thing at first was it was just so overwhelming because it was new to all of us and we didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of self-doubt with that as well. So once we got through that and started getting into the nuts and bolts of everything, the biggest challenge was taking our existing requirements from customers and all of our controlling standards, going through
Yeah.
all of them and making sure that they met aerospace or Nadcap requirements. And if they didn't, we had to bring them up to that standard.
Yeah. Yeah. Any major, and this may be Dave or Kelly on this question. What was the most intimidating piece that you like? Was it what is certain data that you didn't have that you needed to get? I mean, what was there anything that was really stood out as really a difficult step?
I feel like we both would have something to say. So
I
from
think we
my
might.
perspective, it goes right back to what Andrew said at the beginning, where there was a time where you didn't believe you could get this accreditation for
Yeah.
these module therm systems. And so you were so ingrained in that thought process that this is going to be such a hard, difficult challenge to get through that you kind of have to break through the barrier and realize that it's most of the challenge is in you, not so much in the
Yeah.
system. 'Cause the all of the specifications are out there. Your job is to follow them. Your job is to implement them.
Right.
It can be done.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Dave?
So the biggest thing for me was all of the pyrometry requirements from 2750. We were doing it all on the fly, basically, and we didn't hire any additional staffing. So it was very challenging at first. And then eventually we determined that we needed to have our own pyrometry technician to make sure all of the testing was done within the time allotted.
You know, that reminds me because we when we discussed this earlier, you mentioned that you guys had what's the word I want? Had engaged C3 data to help along the process.
Yes.
So I don't
yes.
know, Dave, I don't know, maybe you could tell us what was that like? Was that the pyrometry expert you were talking about, or was that somebody else?
No, that our pyrometry technician is an internal guy. But we started out doing everything by hand, all of the paperwork, documentation, all of that stuff. So we were led to C3 by, don't recall who at this point, but after we went through and checked out the software, it's just a perfect process for us. It allows us to eliminate human error. It gives you automatic checks, and then it's a digital record for the auditors. Great software.
Yeah, yeah. Kelly, any comments about C3 data? I'm just curious what your experience was with them as well.
So I know personal experience from my side. Dave definitely is the one taking care of the on the ground work with all of it.
Gotcha.
But what I noticed was that the internal findings that we had were less human error, as Dave was saying, because we're no longer using Excel spreadsheets and have the ability to accidentally hit the wrong number or whatnot.
Yeah,
And so the data became more reliable.
yeah. That's very interesting. We have a pretty good relationship with C3. We think pretty highly of those guys as well. So when it finally became time, I'm going to ask Dave this question because I think Kelly tells me your boots on the ground. So when it
Yep.
finally came time, although Kelly, this may be more for you, I don't know. When it finally came time to do the audit, how scary was that, and how did it go? I mean, the actual
So
audit itself.
to be honest, it was terrifying. I mean, we were all scared to death, because it was
Yeah,
all so new to us, and it was very overwhelming. But the auditors, to their credit, are very good, and they help you through it. And the most surprising thing was we were able to get accredited on our initial audit.
yeah. And I understand you guys also got merit at one point in time. Did you? Is that recently?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but tell us what that is, just real quick, because I say that and some people may not know what that is.
So a unique aspect of the NADCAP accreditation and something I absolutely adore, being a background in quality and having my annual audits every single year. But once a company meets certain criteria, you can enter a merit program, and it can go all the way up to 24 months between your audits. So
Yeah,
currently Port Huron is at our 18-month, and that happened just after our last audit. So we're very proud of that.
yeah, that's great. That's great. A little bit of work there, blood, sweat, and tears on that one.
Yes.
All right, so let me ask Kelly and Andrew this next question, if you don't mind. Lessons learned. What what is it now? I mean, obviously you went through this certification process for a reason. What is it that ALD, especially the thermal service treatment company, what can you do now that you couldn't do before? And what were some of the lessons learned, I think? And Kelly, I think you kind of hit on some of this before, just the self-doubt stuff and don't doubt it, you can do it, that type of thing. But anything else?
Sure. So when it comes to lessons learned, and I think this is just, it kind of goes with anything in manufacturing or business, but ensuring that your new hires and your current staff are continually getting training. So pyrometry for us, we need to make sure we have a contingency. I mean, it's nice that Dave knows it all, but if Dave wins the lotto tomorrow, we need someone to be able to step in and take over that process. So the continual improvement, constantly training, constantly reinforcing, because it's all about maintaining a system, just like any other system that you
Yeah.
have in place. I would
Yeah.
certainly say that is not necessarily a challenge, but something to keep an eye out on.
Yeah. Yeah. Andrew, how about you on the equipment side of things? Were you fairly involved with the Nadcap approval process or?
So, not really, not for their specific equipment there at Port Huron. But from an equipment supplier perspective, it's been a challenge just letting people know that it's possible in the first place.
Yeah.
So we're starting to see more interest in it now. And because we've had these long history, of this design, it really doesn't take much to make the equipment Nadcap certified. So we have, a comprehensive control system that does everything more or less automatic, including data recording and keeping and being able to interrogate the data historically. But it really just takes a couple tweaks to the equipment, making sure the gas is dry enough, clean enough, that kind of thing. And then we had to make a couple tweaks on the pyrometry side of things, but otherwise, once we enable the pyrometry side, you can do it. You just have to find someone that's willing to take the equipment and go through the process that Port Huron went through.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask this off the cuff question, and Andrew, I'll address it to you. So maybe the ideal person or ideal company currently out there that could benefit by knowing and maybe perhaps having equipment of this sort, what would be the profile of that company? I mean,
So
who
it
would it be?
depends on the parts that they're producing. So the module therm is really geared more towards larger pieces. The synchrotherm is probably a more competitive product, and we've seen it being used for aerospace before. I'm not sure if they're Nadcap certified. I can't speak to how they've operated the equipment since we sold it, but I would say the synchrotherm is probably the right solution for most of our customers looking to get into this. The module therm is really for high throughput component heat treating. Really something like the automotive industry was actually one of the first industries to adopt it, and in a way they're more advanced than the aerospace industry from that perspective. Being able to adopt multicellular heat treatment into their industry. So that's one of the things that the aerospace industry is catching up on. So we haven't quite seen the demand on the module therm side yet, but I would say, the synchrotherm is probably the right furnace. Something small that heat treats aerospace components in that small footprint and has a very rapid turnaround time.
Well, that's great, guys. Thanks very much. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the time. Kelly, Andrew, Dave, thanks for being with us. Hopefully it's going to be helpful to some of our listeners. So appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So thank you to the listeners also for being here. Appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you would like to get in touch with Andrew, Kelly, or David, you can email me and I will put you in touch with them. My email address is doug@heattreattoday.com. And I would like to encourage you, if you're listening on a podcast or something of that sort, where you can rank or rate the episode. 5-star reviews are all we accept. So you have, if you want to do a good 4 or 5-star review, we'll take it, and that will help other people find the episode. If you didn't like it, then just ignore what I'm saying. You don't need to do anything at all. And also, we would like to know what you would like to hear about on Heat Treat Radio. So if you've got a topic you'd like to hear us discuss, please feel free again to email me at doug@heattreattoday.com. I'd also like to thank today's sponsors for their sponsorship of this edition. That's ALD Vacuum Technologies, and they make the equipment, by the way, and of course ALD Thermal Treatments, which is the company that does the actual heat treatment services. I'd like to thank both of them, and you can find out more information about ALD Vacuum Technologies on the web at www.ald-vt, as in vacuum technologies.com. And here comes our standard disclaimer, and that is that this and every other episode of Heat Treat Radio is the sole property of Heat Treat Today and may not be reproduced in part or in whole without advance written permission from Heat Treat Today. And with that, I thank you very much for listening. Hope you all have a great day.